About half a year ago, I made a quick introduction to Reaper. It was a series of short little videos. The idea was that there are a lot of wonderful resources for using Reaper, but there weren't a lot of from the top starting videos. A lot of them have wonderful tools and tricks for people that are very advanced, but I noticed from working with video editing and audio editing software, the fastest way people get started is when they know what not to worry about, when they only look at the things that matter. And the only way to do that is through an apprenticeship situation where you're sitting with someone that knows what they're doing, and they say, don't worry about all that other controls. These we'll worry about later, but to start, we just press this button. Let's do this. You press the button because you know you're safe, and then you just continue. This video wasn't really intended for public consumption. It was for a specific group at the time, but it seems like something that might be useful. So I've compacted all the videos into one from all the way from the top. If you were sitting there, kind of apprentice beginning thing. All the chapters, which used to be the videos, are down in the description below. You can flip back and forth between them. So I hope this is useful. All right, we got Reaper going. Looks like this. Before we get started, let's try to make sure that everything is working correctly. Then we can get into the interface and everything else. If you press Control P for preferences, right? I guess Command P in Mac, I'm not totally certain. You'll find this crazy menu, but we only need to look at a few things in here. The first one is under audio, it's device. Do you see this? If it's available, switch to the ASIO, the ASIO driver. This one right here. If it's not, then you can use some of these like direct sound. And if that causes trouble, you can go all the way back to this WDM, like a codec, right? The next thing to make sure is to select your interface. Your interface. So if you're using a Scarlett Solo or something, it should be that. And input is for your recording, so your microphone. So you're selecting that so that you use that to record. And the same thing with output. You would use the that device for output, right? Like this. Okay. Make sure you have these set this way, because if not, you're going to wonder like why you don't get any audio or something like that. The next thing we should look at is recording, also under audio. If you see it right here, it's a few more down. And this is not necessary, but it's a very interesting thing to do. You can change the recorded file names, and this can be really useful. The file has a unique name, like number 1, number 2, number 3, and you can actually control what it's called so that you don't have to relabel them or find them later. So if you look really carefully, you can see that I put this one as year, a 4-digit year, like 2023, the month, right? Then the day, the hour, you can do anything you want, but this is really cool. The minute, the second, underscore, then a track number, and then the track, and then Reaper in this case. So the files, the temporary files that are saved when you're recording are going to have these names. So you don't have to rename them. If you recorded on Tuesday at 2 p.m., you know you were there, you can flip back through the temp files or anything and you'll be able to find it. I think that's pretty cool. When you first turn this thing on, you're going to see it has 3 major sections. If you look at it, you can kind of see them. This top right section is the track area. It's kind of the timeline where your tracks will be when you're recording. So if you had several tracks and you were recording on one of them or something like this, we'll figure out how to do this a little later. Hello guys, we're doing our thing. Oh, is that awesome? Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah. All right, let's turn off this monitoring because it's annoying. This area over to the left is the control area. That's where all the stuff is for controlling these tracks, like naming them or something like that. You know, you can name them. There's other controls and stuff. We'll look into that in a minute. You don't have to remember any of this right now. There's one more section. This third section is the mixer. So if you have a whole bunch of tracks, this is actually just like an audio mixer, like in a recording studio or something like that. And you can put stuff in here and get into that too. But that's it. That's the entire interface. Okay, when we're moving around in our project, we have to be able to zoom in and out on stuff and kind of navigate the timeline, which is pretty simple stuff. I mean, you'll discover all this on your own automatically, but I'm just going to show it anyway, just for expediency. At the bottom of the timeline is this bar thing. Do you see this? And this bar shows us the extent of what we can see. So if we go to the end of the universe down here, or to the beginning, if you were to somehow zoom all the way out, you could see the whole thing, and that bar would go all the way across the bottom, right? It's pretty obvious, right? So one way to do that is to scroll on your pointing device, your mouse. If you scroll down, it just zooms out. And if you scroll up, it zooms in. And we can move and click on the timeline anywhere we want to zoom in on that area that we're concerned with. Like this little peak here, we can take a look at it and just click on areas and see what we can see, right? Zooming in and out just with the scroll wheel. Now you can actually move that bar, like I said, across the bottom, and it does move, so you can use that. But it's a global control, so if you have a really long timeline, this will move when you're zoomed in quite quickly, and it's very hard to make a tiny adjustment, right? One way to move this to just pull the timeline really easily is if you look at the very top of the screen. You can actually see when the mouse pointer gets all the way to the top, you'll see a little hand. There it is. You can just drag the timeline back and forth with this hand really easily. That's cool. Now, another way to do this also is with the Alt key. If you press the Alt key on your keyboard and hold it down, then when you scroll, it actually moves back and forth just the same way the hand would. And as you zoom in, this is relative to the portion you see, so it's not going to go flying off the handle. What if you needed to zoom in vertically, so you could actually zoom in and look at one of these tracks, like this one up close or this one? You can just press Control or Command, right? And zoom in and out anywhere you want, right? And if you're not pressing Control or Command, then it will scroll vertically as long as the mouse is over the control area. So that's pretty useful. Another thing is if you need a whole bunch of space, you can actually get rid of the entire mixer. It's still there, but you can just hide it, right? By pressing Control or Command M. So if you press M for mixer, you can remember that pretty easily, right? Then you can move it out of the way. It's still down there doing its thing, but you know, we don't see it. So now we can actually zoom around pretty easily and then see all the tracks and whatever we want to look at really closely, or zoom in and out and see an enormous amount of stuff really easily without anything in the way, with a kind of limited display like we have here. Remember, Control M for mixer to bring it back. All right, let's continue. You might notice these vertical lines you can see where you can't seem to put the playhead anywhere that you're going to use to play back and record and stuff, anywhere except on these lines. This is a sort of quantization tool that is used for music, where you put drums and elephants on here and then it'll line them up for you really nicely. We can turn this off. Like for voice recording or voice acting, we obviously want to move things around with a little more precision and not necessarily align with any particular beat. Over on the top left, this button right here is the snap tool. Now we might want to leave this on, but it allows you to place the playhead anywhere you want, not necessarily on one of these little lines, right? So that's pretty useful. But what's more useful is this other button, Grid Lines Enabled. You can disable and remove the grid lines completely. Now, even with the snap tool on, which you might have a use for later for something else, you can place anything anywhere you want. Right there. Grid lines. All right, cool. Let's add some tracks so we can put some stuff in here. This is kind of like a mixer with no channels. That'd be pretty weird, huh? Over here in the control area, you can right click, and there are a bunch of controls for this. insert new track, obviously, or Control T, right? Zoom in a little bit. Remember the control button and zooming on over here? We can also double click and it'll just automatically add tracks for us. That's pretty cool, right? Neat. Cool. Let's continue. All right, we've got a bunch of tracks. We can name them, right? Right? Okay. That's pretty obvious. And of course, you see the name down here on the actual tracks, right? And you can change them here, right? Like that. Easy. Might be useful. Let's continue. We can organize these by color, right? We can paint these, which is kind of nice. Just select what you want, right click, and then change the track color. Just like anything else. Custom, random, one random, right? There we go. Cool. Now we're ready to record. We've decided we're going to record here to track 1 in this case. There is a button right here to the left of each. Do you see these? This particular track is armed. The reason for this is kind of interesting. In a very simple recording software, it will just record to whatever track you choose. So if you're working with this one or this one, it'll just somehow decide that it's okay to record there. If you have a more sophisticated piece of editing software, it will not record anywhere it wants. It will only record where it is allowed to. In other words, you've patched your microphone in to that channel. And this is because you might have something very important on this track, which is maybe one of really, really many of them. And if it just decided to record there, it might record over something very important or cause confusion, or you might be lost somewhere and who knows how many things are going on and you may never find it again. So it's kind of a weird deal to just have it record wherever it wants. So this is a very normal thing in a lot of these systems, but you get used to it. If you try to record with that arm thing off, it'll just tell you, nothing's connected. What are you doing? So you can start, but it won't be recording anything. And it won't work. Okay, let's go ahead and make a recording. Like, why not? You know, what's the worst that could happen? You could just not like the recording and throw it away. So that's cool. We'll choose this track. Like if there were a bunch of them, we could just decide on this one and press the arm button. Check that out. Okay, as you can see, we've got a little meter so we can see the level. Now you're going to hear a weird sound, like an echo sound, when you arm the track. And that's normal. What that is this monitoring. It's sending the audio that it would be recording back to you so you can hear. Most interfaces have a direct monitoring control or something so that they can send the audio straight back to you so you don't have any delay like this. So you would turn this off, this little speaker, and then you don't hear the weird. So you could turn this back on if you had some kind of cool plugin or some robot or monster sound or some kind of special effects or processing. You could turn this on and hear if you wanted to. Before we start recording, let's go down here to the meter right here on this channel strip, because it's a little bigger and easier to read than the one up on the timeline, and make sure that the level is averaging around -18. You can see it's a little bit too hot here. You don't adjust this in the software. This is actually telling you what the level is on your recording interface. So the actual input on the preamp of your interface is where you adjust this. Now it is going to start recording right from where the playhead is, the little vertical cursor thing, right? So you want to have that where you want to start recording, or at the beginning. And the transport controls, you know, like play, record, rewind, are right here on the left. So you can just press the go to start a project if you want, and it'll go right to the beginning. Then we can go ahead and press record. Hello, I'm making a recording and it's great. It's a little bit loud, isn't it? The gain's a little too high. Isn't that interesting? But we can adjust it like this. When we're ready to conclude our recording, we can just press the space bar. And it will ask you, is this garbage? And your answer, in this case, is yes, it's terrible. You can delete everything and start over, or you can save everything. That's when it saves the file. Okay, cool. Recording's no big deal, is it? Let's continue. All All right, we got a sweet recording here, right? We can play
Everything's
it.
fine in this world. Oh my god. Okay. More talking. Oh no.
All right, that's great. And we want to bring in some kind of file from the outside world. It could be music or Foley or something like that, or some kind of background stuff, right? In the old days, it was a little bit more difficult, but what we can do is we can just open the folder and we can literally drag music and files in here. This is not really the right way to do it, but it's possible.
Everything's fine.
Oh my gosh, and then we have to turn it way down until we can hear what we're doing. Let me look with you.
Everything's fine in this world. Oh my god. Okay. More talking. Oh no.
Okay, so that's actually a way to do it. What if you had hundreds or thousands of files and you wanted to hear them so you could tell what was going on? Do you remember Control M when you get rid of the mixer from earlier? Well, there's another machine. It's a file explorer. If you press Control Alt X, now Control Alt X, that's a little bit weird, but let's see if there's a, let's see, View perhaps? Media Explorer, there it is. So you can press View and then Media Explorer and it will pop up, and it's this kind of device right here, and it's just like a file browser, except when you have audio files, if you click on them, they'll play. Okay, so you can actually figure out what you like and then drag the files directly into your project, just like you did before. But one thing really, another thing that's really interesting, press delete again, that you can do is you can select a file that you're interested in and you can find just a place that you like say this. All right, and if you just wanted that, yeah, that's pretty cool. Great. And you can just drag that in and it will drag just that one component in.
Everything's fine in this world. Oh.
Right? Which is kind of cool. Although it won't drag back out, it will also loop.
Everything's fine in this world. Oh my god. Okay. More.
Right? So that may not be useful for us, but that's just something kind of interesting to keep in mind. Right? That it actually does loop. So if you had a drone or something weird, you could just drop that in, and if it wasn't long enough, you could just pull that out to the length that you wanted, right? So that's kind of awesome. This is the Media Explorer. All right, we've got our stuff together, and we're going to want to play it to see if we need to adjust levels or something like that, if something's too loud or quiet. And we have this playhead thing we're moving around. That's kind of interesting. So it'll play from the playhead's position. Now, if you press on an actual piece of content here, it will select that. But if you just press out in between or something like that, you can move the playhead around without selecting anything. And we want to press go. We usually press spacebar in most software, right? And here we go.
Everything's fine in this world.
Right, and it does work. We can play from here.
Oh no.
But you'll notice something interesting. And did you notice this?
Oh no. Alright.
The playhead does not move.
Oh no.
Right, so it automatically stays and it plays forward. But then when you press spacebar again, it just returns to where it started.
Oh.
So this is really useful if you're looking at one particular thing and you don't want the playhead, like a tape player, to end wherever you stopped playback. But sometimes you might want that. If you press enter instead of the space bar,
Okay.
that play
More talking. Oh no.
method stops wherever you ended the playback, right?
Alright. Oh.
Right, see what I'm saying? So space bar
Okay. Okay.
starts over where you were,
Okay.
and enter
More talking. Oh no.
stops the playhead wherever you ended.
Alright. Oh.
Okay? Let's look a little closer. If you wanted to look at this section right here just by itself, or some section right here, one thing that's really interesting you can do is hold down the mouse button and drag. and you'll be selecting an area. You can do this by mistake, and this is kind of dangerous, but find an area that's not on an active track, and then you can do it. So if there's a bunch of stuff here, you can just go down here and do it and select an area. It's going to loop this one section. Make sure this loop button is on. You can press R to turn this on and off if you want. Usually you leave it on. You just press play. No matter what you do, it's going to continue looping in a circle like this. This can be really useful if you're looking at one area and you just want it to keep playing that zone. Really annoying. And you think, wow, I found a consonant that really is particularly interesting to me. And you'll just play this.
In this world.
Right, and then you can get the bass in this case with the vocal lined up. That sounds really annoying, but sometimes this can be incredibly useful. If you're trying to see if a sibilant sound is a little bit weird or make an adjustment, you can actually just play that one thing, right? That's pretty cool. The problem is when you've selected an area, you can't figure out how to unselect it. It's like, oh my gosh, what do? I can't get out.
Oh my God.
Just press escape. Escape on the keyboard always gets rid of a selection, right? Escape, okay? Escape. Cool. So we've got all our stuff. We've got our music and weird things put in here. We know how to play it.
More talking.
Pressing the space bar and the enter key to go back and forth. Now we have to chop this thing up. The first thing you can do, which might be of use to you, is you can select any clip and move it just by dragging it to some other position. If you made a mistake, don't worry, just press Control Z and it'll go back where it was, right? So Control Z. The second thing is that you can chop off the ends of these clips. If you put the mouse like on the right of the second channel, you can actually move the end, cropping off some of the junk on the end of these files. You can always do such a thing. And if you go up to the top, when the cursor is up at the top at the edge, see what's going on? You can add a fade, and you can put the fade anywhere on any of these ends of these tracks by going up to that corner where this changes. Do you see it? What if you wanted to get rid of this stuff in here? This is where you use the split command. Now there are a bunch of advanced crazy editing stuff like this. And we're going to skip most of that because we're just trying to get used to the interface. So we just need the stuff we really need to get by. Split is the S key. If you just press S, now this is two parts. Do you see what's going on? Cool, right? So we can actually split here, and we can just take this piece out. If you select it and press delete, you can delete that, and now we have these independent clips. When you run two independent chunks like this into each other, they'll automatically fade. That can be useful too, right? You see that? Kind of neat. So we can split things here anywhere we like. If we wanted to move these chunks around that you can here, not you. Let's see. We could actually just go through here, and we don't even need to get them right. We could actually get rid of these moments here if we wanted, right? If there's useful background noise in here, we wouldn't want to do this, but now we've got these little chunks we can move around, which are kind of interesting, right?
Okay.
And we can time them if we like to. The expression we're trying to make or something like that. And remember, the space bar will go back, right? So you can hear this, and then you can see, I can't even hear.
Oh no. Oh.
Okay, so you can move these around. Now, it might not be possible just with scrolling and zooming in with the mouse to see exactly where you would want to move this thing if it wasn't quite perfectly lined up or something like that. It might be a lot of work. So what you can do is you can select something and press N, nudge. Then this tool comes up. It's pretty awesome, right? And you can nudge right or left. And if I zoom in a whole bunch, you can actually see this there. You see it? Right now we're nudging 1 millisecond, 1,000th of a second. So if you combine the looping, right? That's pretty annoying. But then you nudge this one piece. You can actually play it and nudge it around until it was exactly what you wanted, right? So nudge N. Well, that's terrible. Which kind of brings us to another interesting component is up here in this menu. This is the ripple editing control. And if you mess with video editing, you're probably familiar with this. The ripple control will behave differently when it comes to everything after whatever you're moving. I'll just, let's see, if we're going to move this piece, right, back and forth, it's independent of everything else right now. There's no ripple control activated, right? So if we turn on ripple editing like this per track, watch, it's easier to show than explain, right? Everything after it maintains the same relationship, which could disturb something you've got moved down there. You just have to know, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing. But if you hit it again a second time, it's ripple editing all tracks. That means everything after the track you're doing. So these two are actually before this one. Everything after on all tracks will be moved, preserving the relationship between everything. Watch this. You can see the music on 3 and person 1, the first clip, is not moving, but everything afterwards. So if you have a whole chapter of audio or something like that, you can just grab the first thing and you can move the entire chunk, and then every chunk after that of everything will move, but the relationships will be preserved. Pretty useful, huh? That's pretty cool. Ripple editing. It's awesome. We need to control the levels on these different tracks. Obviously, in this case, the music one should be quieter or something like that. There are faders on the mixer, just like a recording console, and you can turn the each channel up and down. That's pretty obvious, right?
Okay, more talking. Oh,
Ooh,
no.
that's loud.
All right. Oh, no.
Right? And so you can adjust these, but they are fixed through time. Right? They don't actually move on their own in this case, but there's a button for that. If we look at each track very carefully in the control area, we can see this little button that says trim. Do you see this? Trim, trim. That's automation. So if we hit this, we can add any kind of control for volume, pan, width, volume before effects, or whatever. So if you hit this, we add another little control on this track. Now, for this track, which I guess is, what is this, bass guitar in this case?
Everything's fine in this world.
All right. This has an extra control here for how loud it is. And you can see right here that you can adjust it.
More talking. Oh, no.
So it does work.
Right.
And it is, there's only one control point here, so it's just like an extra volume knob. This arm control right here is just like you would have for recording. When you're playing back and you have this arm control on, if you had hardware, like some gadget with a fader or something like that, you could control the, not that one, but you could control the level with this while it was playing back and record that level in. But we can still use this without that. If you go to a spot where you want the level to be going down, like for instance here, we have a beginning, there's nothing going on, and then there's all this speech begins.
Everything's fine in this world. Oh my God. Okay.
Okay, we might want the level to be higher before and then go down when the speech begins or something like that, right? We can do that. You can go right to where you want one of these control points, right, this, and you can press shift and hit with the mouse. And it'll actually tell you right here, when you hold the shift button down, insert envelope point right here, right? There, can you see them? Now when you grab this area, you can actually turn the level down. There we go. Now it'll get quieter.
Everything's fine in this world. Oh my God. Okay.
It's too quiet, isn't it? Right, so it's just a simple way to automate without any required hardware or anything like that. Might be really useful. Cool, let's continue. All right, so we've got our tracks. We can zoom in and out. Got all this stuff figured out. We need to add possibly some kind of processing or something to one of these tracks, or maybe most of them or something. I don't know. The way Reaper works, a lot of things work this way. You don't actually process the file. Each of these is just playing back a file that is safe in some folder somewhere. And what you're doing is, if you're adding effects, you will smash them into these little openings. You see these? Where it says effects? You just drop them in there and it will play the audio from whatever track they're attached to, like this one, through this processing until you export it. When you export it, it'll bake that all in there, but really nothing is actually changing the original file. Pretty cool, right? And you can add anything you want in here. Try not to overdo it. And this is just talking about it, but like we can just click this and we can add a piece of processing to this track or whatever. In this case, we're adding something to the second track, which is other person. Now, when you first get in here, it will look like this. There will be just a huge pile of stuff, and it won't really make a lot of sense. A lot of this is just weird stuff. You can make little folders like these. You see these? Just right click out here and add folder, right? And then you can put things from that big pile or anywhere else in there. You can just drag this into your special folder. So you can put your just a couple of equalizers or processors or reverbs that you like in these folders, and you can stay very organized. So we can take our channel and we can drag, say, whatever this is into there. You can double click here or just press add. Now this contraption, this equalizer thing, is patched in. So if I go down into the 700s and I turn it up real loud, you'll hear the effect of this processing.
Okay, more talking.
Oh no. Right, so this has changed this voice. There can be special effects. You can do, it's your decision, any of these things. However, you have to get rid of the ones you don't want. And it may seem kind of confusing that there's no place to get rid of it. You just press Alt on the keyboard. If you hit this, when you press Alt, it will nuke the, it'll remove the filter. Another thing really interesting about it is that if you have some filter here and you want to move it over to another channel, you can just drag it and copy it over to another channel like that. Isn't that nice? Pretty cool. Okay. So there's only a couple things left we can really look at here. You're getting pretty good at this, right? Which is cool. Aux sends is another one that we might look at. If we look at these places where we put the effects, we can look at this lower half and you'll see a control for sends, right? Our outputs. Let's just hit one and see what happens. This menu pops up so you can create a send. Now, a send, yeah, that's pretty weird, isn't it? Your channel is playing audio when you press play, and all the channels are playing audio, but they have to send it somewhere. If you look at an old console, you can see that there's faders, and they send the audio usually out to the main output, just like you see here on Reaper, which I've moved over to the right somehow, but that doesn't really matter. Then there can be other places to send audio. Most old consoles have these extra faders. And if you said, well, I want to send the audio out, but I also want to send it to this other place, that could be a special effect. And you could return that to a channel, right? You could say, well, I have a reverb. That's pretty cool. And I'm going to send all the audio from all these things besides going out. I'm also going to send a mixture of it, another mix, another amount of it to this other place as reverb. So all the vocals go to the reverb, right? And the main vocals go out. So we can do this here, right? By hitting add new send. Now there's something we have to think about before doing this really quickly. And I'll tell you why this is really important in a second, but let's just make a new channel and call that effects or verb, right? Here it is. It's a great, this reverb channel would have a reverb on it, for example. What do we got that's cool? It's all weird stuff, isn't it? Okay, so there's a reverb out there, and its output is sending it back to this channel. Nothing's plugged into it yet. If you want to send these two vocals to this reverb, for example, then you would go to this bottom thing and make a send that sends stuff over there. So add new send, right? And there it is. Now it's going to send the audio to that, right? And again, just like with the reverbs, we can copy this over to the next channel. So now that we have these aux sends going to this reverb channel, right? So they're basically going into the reverb and they're coming out here. And if we turn this up, we're going to hear the output of the reverb, whatever goes into it. And then these channels are all feeding into it, all right? So if we play,
Everything's fine in this world. Oh
we have
my
the
God,
speech
okay.
here.
Everything's fine in this world. Oh my God. Okay. More talking.
If we turn up the reverb.
Oh no. All right. Oh no. Oh.
Okay, so you can hear that it's coming back to you through this reverb. You think, well, why would somebody do that? You could just put the reverbs on these channels, right? That's pretty neat. There's actually a problem with that. When you have a room and you have a bunch of people in the room, they're all together in the room, you kind of want the reverb to behave the same or it'll be less convincing. So you want the same reverb for everyone. And that is a lot more believable. So you just have one machine. You could put 3 reverbs on 3 people or 4 on 4 people. But now you've quadrupled the amount of work because you have to copy the settings if you change anything over and over to all of these reverbs. And you're also quadrupling, in this case, the amount of work your computer's doing, because these reverbs are the heaviest, weirdest things. Like some of this processing is really heavy, and it'll max out your computer because we don't often have as few as 4 reverbs. We might have a room with 7 people talking, background sounds, machinery, worth knowing about, right? All right, let's continue. One thing nice about Reaper is that you can set up stuff to automatically be a certain way, like a preset or a template or something like that. One of these is a template. Once you get everything the way you want, you don't want to have to redo all the processing. All right, then you can right click on it and say save tracks, in this case this one, as track template, right, as a track template. If you hit that, we can save it and call it a vocal thing or something like that, or whatever you want to do, right? Cool. Now, if you ever need that again, you can just right click here and you can say insert track from template, and there it is. Awesome, right? You hit it, and sure enough, it's armed and ready to record. It has the processing you wanted and everything, even the name. The final thing I want to share with you, because you have stuff to do, is project templates, which is probably the biggest time saver and the most interesting thing in here, really. It's pretty cool. Suppose you had set up your project. All this stuff is all set up exactly how you want, a reverb with a send to it, everything. So you've got everything exactly how you want, and you're ready to record, but you're going to do this on a regular basis or something like that. Cool. We can hit File, and then, if we can find it, Project Templates. You see this? It's really interesting stuff. Save as Project Template, right? And it's in this weird apt-add folder, but we can call this, you know, like a vocal recording or something like that. If we wanted to bring up all that stuff the way we wanted or something like that. File, Project Templates, and there it is. And if you hit it, everything is where you want it. Tell me that's not interesting. We have to deliver this audio because that's the point of doing all this, right? If you look up in the top left menu corner, it's File, Render, right? File, Render, and this cool menu pops out. Faster way, if you remember how we use Control-Alt-X to make that file browser appear, we can just press Control-Alt-R for render, and there it is. And we can select all the settings we want and then send it out. Here's the folder. We're sending it to disk H in this case, called Sweet Recording. Sweet Recording 1. Typically, if you're sending a raw file or an uncompressed file to someone, it'll be 48K. In the case of voice, it would be mono, right? It could be stereo if there's panning or something cool. And we would send that out as a wave, like this. Okay. If it's a delivery file to go online or something like that, you would want to smash it down and go ahead and turn it into a delivery product, and that would probably be MP3, like this. All right. When you're ready, you just press render one file, and here we go. It just cruises through and makes it, and even give you some statistics. Isn't that awesome? Cool. And then when you press close, it's done. You're done. Now we've gone through the whole process and everything, and I hope you get some awesome recordings.